listed as one of the top 10 plastic surgeons in America. A Harvard-trained brainiac with a Beverly Hills practice said to be revolutionizing the art and science of plastic surgery. His name, Dr. Mark Money, renowned as the only one in the world to master the scarless facelift. A-listers and celebrities call him the one to see. That his before and afters say it all. His eye for beauty even lauded in the art he paints to adorn his walls. His skillful hands and eye ahead of the times, they say, despite his time behind bars. It was a devastating year away, but one that would change his life forever. And make him, he says, not just a better surgeon, but a better man. A tale of redemption for a pioneering surgeon to the stars. Dr. Mark Money, he is today's LA Story. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of LA Stories. I'm Giselle Fernandez, coming to you from the beautiful Truesdale, Beverly Hills estate of Dr. Mark Money. He is one of the most sought-after plastic surgeons in the world. He is renowned for pioneering this trailblazing scarless facelift and also innovating techniques to rejuvenate the face by using your own stem cells. Dr. Mark Money, thank you for inviting us into your beautiful home.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
So many say you are revolutionizing the art of plastic surgery. What makes your work so groundbreaking?
I have come up with a way of doing a surgical facelift without the scar in front of the ear. I figured out a way I can go with an endoscope, with a camera, and go under the muscle and lift the face, very thoroughly and naturally without making that scar. I'm the only one that does it that way.
What you call the total composite flap lift. You're not pulling skin, as is the traditional facelift. You're lifting muscle flap?
That's right. That's how I published it in the leading academic journal. Pulling the muscle, lifting the muscle of the face and the neck. I found that it works much better, it's more natural. And lifting the muscle in the neck also supports the face on a deeper level, a deeper plane. It's technically more difficult, but it's just my happy place. There's certain suturing, microsurgical suturing techniques that I use to blend in the scar, which I have done on a lot of people that are pretty high profile, and they're very happy with that. And it's an honor that they come and trust me for that, but I definitely feel that I'm the one that should be doing it.
There's another procedure that I find very interesting, which is called MIST. And you say this is something you, again, innovated that involves less lasers and fillers and more of your own stem cells. How does it work?
That's right. MIST stands for Minimally Invasive Stromovascular Transfer. It's something that I innovated, injecting just stem cells that are taken out from the fat. The beauty of it is it comes from your own tissue. It brightens the skin and it adds moisture to the skin. I had a patient that came to me. It reversed really bad acne scarring. It took a while. It took about 6 months, and it kept improving over a couple of years. And so that's what really turned me onto it. You look amazing. Looks really natural, really beautiful.
And I understand, I mean, you're a plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills, but you don't like anything fake, I read.
Right. It sounds ironic. I truly don't. Anything that is obvious, that's noticeable, whether it's filler, breast implants that are too large, and exaggerated rhinoplasty, is a complete failure of plastic surgery, in my opinion. And I think we go to extremes sometimes, but that's why I like to hew to that sort of ethic.
You have to draw a very clear aesthetic line, it seems, so that you don't go overboard. How do you find that balance?
Well, I think that's where the artistry comes in, treating the face as a dynamic structure. It's not a sculpture. The face is the means by which we express our emotions. It's the ultimate embodiment of our humanity. So anytime you disturb that, we have an entire segment of our brain where we recognize facial authenticity, facial expressions, the smallest twitch of an orbicularis muscle around the eye. It's beyond words, it came before language, our comprehension and the integration of facial awareness. And so I think that's something I'm aware of, and I think that's helped me in my practice.
Mm-hmm. Your father was a surgeon from India, and your mom an artist. You kind of combine both of those influences. Your paintings hang in your practice as well as here in your home.
Right, it was sort of inevitable in some ways. I'm an artist based on, genetics. I was just always able to do it. So there's just a gene for that, just like there's a gene for music and maybe mathematics and things like that. The artist that I admire most is Da Vinci. He's a scientist and an artist. That's something I aspire to also. I think that is something that helps me in my surgical practice.
And I understand when you were 11 and 12, you always were like this. You asked your dad, what college should I go to? And he said Harvard. And from that point on, you had a mission and you set out to do it. What does that say about you?
Well, it's just me, so I don't know any different. It says that I have a mission. I always thought of cosmetic surgery as too frivolous, and I had a deeper yearning to do something more meaningful, and so I was going to do cardiac surgery. But when I first saw a reconstructive procedure where I saw plastic surgeons taking a leg bone, a fibula bone, and molding it into a jawbone and detaching and reattaching the blood vessels into the carotid artery in the neck, I had no idea that plastic surgeons did that. And so that was the delicateness and the fact that it's vascular surgery, microsurgery is what really drew me in. I went to medical school specifically to be a surgeon because I knew I had the hands. I had the dexterity and loved working with my hands.
People come to you and they want you to make them beautiful. How do you answer that calling when beauty is intrinsic to who they are?
Well, there's a lot of complexity to my answer to that. Beauty is confidence. And so if you bring out someone's confidence, then they become more beautiful. Beauty is also individual. And so I think this trend where people are starting to all look the same is ugly. It's sad. My goal is not to make, as a colleague of mine once said, we're not in the witness protection program. We're here to bring out the individuality and the individual beauty. We want your eyes to shine more. We want your soul to speak more. When aging changes will inhibit that. They inhibit your confidence. We're in a youth-obsessed society, and I don't want to dig into that too much or indulge that too much, but I think it's a fact of life that looking younger will make you more confident. The best way to put it, the most succinct way to put it, it brings out your voice. It brings out what you have inside yourself if it's done correctly.
You're a man who's obviously, deeply into the science of what you do, but you've been kind of forced to also embrace the soul and the human being and the holistic patient.
When I operate on someone, number one, I see the commonality between every human being and ultimately every animal, which is that the nerves are in the same place, the vertebrae are in the same place, the facial skeleton is essentially identical between humans and animals, is analogous or homologous if you talk in evolutionary terms. And so there's been a deeper absorption of that from my hands touching the reality of biological protoplasm into my soul. And so that's something that I just love, and I think, in spite of the potential, frivolity of what I do, I definitely feel like I made the right choice.
For as scientific as you can be, you also have become very soulful about the experiences that you've shared very, very openly. You were incarcerated, convicted of not declaring a foreign bank account on your business, on your surgical practice in Dubai. And we're going to get into how that experience made you a better surgeon and a better man when LA Stories comes right back.
Beautiful.
You can hear more of this conversation on my podcast, LA Stories Unfiltered. Listen now on the Spectrum News app or wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to LA Stories, everyone. I'm Giselle Fernandez with plastic surgeon to A-listers and the stars here in Beverly Hills, Dr. Mark Mani. You have been so open about sharing the time you were incarcerated for not declaring a foreign bank account in Dubai with your surgical practice. Why are you so open about it? Why is it important for you to share it?
Well, being open about a obviously traumatic experience is part of the healing process. It made me face, the real deep questions of who I am. And that's been, a tough part of the journey, but a very rewarding part.
Let's go back a bit so our viewers truly understand what happened. So you have this thriving A-list, stellar practice, revolutionary techniques. No one else in the world is doing what you do. You open up a practice in Dubai and you don't declare the income that you've made on that practice?
That's exactly right.
To the tune of $1.3 million, is that correct?
That's exactly right. And the tax loss, as they call it, was around $400,000. The reason it happened is that I'm not I'm not good with numbers, obviously, and I had an accountant that told me I had to pay taxes on it. I fired him and hired one who was more facile with foreign accounts, And I followed his advice, which was that I could report this income as a loan. I knew there was something wrong though, and I had a sense of guilt about it. So I didn't deny that I was, accountable for this.
You said you were motivated by greed.
I did, and I think that was a big part of it, and it really made me face that was part of my motivation. And I don't think that I was a bad person, and it's not like I was harming people directly. I was helping people. I saved lives working in emergency rooms in Houston when I was in my training. But as the judge put it, just because you do good things doesn't mean you can do bad things. So I don't have a sense of rectitude. I mean, I think a lot of people react to what happened to me as saying it's unfair when violent criminals go free. But this is me, and I should have a higher standard than that.
You were sentenced to a year and a day behind bars. You didn't even have a chance to put your affairs in order. Was that a shock to you?
Yes, I would say, I'm a pretty even-keeled person, but that was a pretty shocking thing. It was obviously being hit by a freight train. The idea that I would potentially go to prison, I thought that there's no way I could recover from that, even for a month. When the judge sentenced me, my friends were there, my best friend and my partner, Neil Handel, was there, and I had a charity patient from the UK that I had done some reconstruction work on who was burned in a domestic violence incident, who was going to testify for me, and the heads of the charity that I've worked with for years were there. And that's what the judge said. Just because you do great things doesn't mean you can do bad things.
Holding you up as an example?
Yes, I know that they were. And, I in my life, I've aspired to be an exemplary person, and I certainly wasn't in that respect. And that's a significant respect because we pay taxes for a reason. We're lucky to be in this country. I'm not necessarily happy about the way the money is always spent, but at the same time, that's how we survive as a cohesive unit, as a society, and I understand that. I wasn't displaying integrity, I guess, in that way, in the way that I should have. And so it wasn't surprising to me that I got sentenced. It was certainly surprising to me that I got remanded from court, which is where the shackle handcuff part comes in. That was a little bit beyond the pale. I had no idea that was even a potential thing because I'm not a violent criminal.
So you didn't put any of your papers or your affairs in order?
Nothing. And my friends, sorry,
It's okay.
My partner, Neil Handel, was there. And I guess I felt a sense of shame. He's the reason that I came to LA. He interviewed me, took me into his practice, did things for me that I'm sure that no other surgeon has done for another surgeon, just in terms of helping introduce me to the community.
Was he kind of like a father figure to you?
Yeah, he was a father figure that I maybe was missing in some ways. Mm-hmm. My father, he loved me and he really wanted the best for me, but just didn't know how to show it. Neil kind of did. And, he calls me the brother he never had. He's 20 years older than me, but I do feel that he's a father figure
and he was
a role
there
model.
for you.
And he was there for me, and he's still there. He took care of my patients while I was gone. I get emotional, when I talk about what he did for me. He's a good human being.
Well, and you need a friend when something
Right.
like that's so soul-jolting happens.
Right. It's part of the whole picture of, taking a look at who am I. Here I am, I'm thinking I'm doing everything I was meant to do in this life, and then I'm being prosecuted for this crime that they don't prosecute a lot of people for the amount of money, and I paid it all back before I was sentenced. A lot of people don't think that's the case, but it was all paid back. So it's not a debtor's prison situation. It's where they are making an example of you. But I realized that, a Beverly Hills plastic surgeon, and maybe sometimes sort of iconic or whatever it is, but they're not a hero of society.
You're such a cerebral guy, but this kind of got to your soul. This really shook your identity to the core.
Yes, it was like being flushed down a toilet into the seventh circle of hell. Maximum security federal facility downtown called the Metropolitan Detention Center. Prison didn't scare me. Prison in and of itself didn't scare me because, as I tell people, I did a 6-year surgical residency in Houston at Baylor in the most hardcore surgical training program there is. And I loved it, but it's not easy. You're up walking the hallway at 3 a.m, you don't sleep. You do 48-hour shifts sometimes where you barely sleep. And
it prepared you. Mm-hmm.
Right. And, I didn't do it to prepare for prison, but that's kind of, that helped.
How did you find the strength through that process, especially in the early days?
When I found myself, behind bars, literally, and lockdown sometimes, I thank God for Amazon. I ordered, 30 or 40 books, textbooks on space-time, relativity physics, and quantum physics, evolutionary theory, Richard Dawkins, and I read them, some of them 2-3 times over, and I wrote a book. a view of reality that incorporates the bridges between science and spirituality, which are clearly very real. One of the important questions of science that really hasn't been answered is, why do human beings cooperate so extremely? Why do we act like an ant colony? Why do we build these cities that we see that are just like ants on a little, ant highway? It's because they're all related to each other. They're all essentially one organism or one family. Humans are not related, but yet we still do this. And so that's part of my book is arriving at that. What I've always believed is that human beings evolved to help each other out. And that's part of what I try to answer, because when I was in prison, I observed people helping each other out, form a unit and form kind of one organism. And I saw that.
To see ourselves in everything around us and each
Right,
other.
right, to see the mirroring. The year was a gift. It just got me more in touch with, being human myself and what really is human.
And what did you learn?
The most happy, most successful people are the ones that get beyond themselves. And that was a big part of my journey, is getting over, this image and all these other things, and saying, what can I do in the larger picture? How can I do something that benefits society? Because ultimately, it's what you leave behind that's most important.
And in terms of the personal shame, have you worked through that?
Well, I'm still working through it, I think. Yeah, it's still there, but it's a process, dealing with those things and becoming honest and self-reflective, but also becoming more of a contributor with whatever you have.
And my goodness, have you become a contributor? We're going to get into your charity work and the amazing services that Dr. Mani provides to so many in need who could never afford his services otherwise, when LA Stories comes right back. Welcome back to LA Stories, everyone. We're talking with Dr. Mark Mani about his extraordinary practice, plastic surgery, renowned, revolutionizing the art around the world, but also went through some really difficult times, incarcerated for not reporting your foreign bank account. You came out of that experience a changed person. You had been doing charity work long before your imprisonment, but that really did fuel you to want to do more. Is that right?
It definitely did. It made me want to go deeper and use those skills for that, for no other reason than just to help and to be of service. Ultimately, the most important thing about your life is the service you provide.
Mm-hmm. Makes you feel better.
Well, it makes you feel better, and more importantly, it makes the person you help feel better.
Talk to me about who you help.
There's a charity called Face Forward, which brings people from all corners of the globe who've been victims of domestic violence, and terrorism and other forms of trauma, human trafficking in particular. And I've been taking care of some of these patients, and a lot of them have facial acid burns from a jilted lover in particular. My partner, Neil Handel, and I just did a breast reconstruction on a patient who had been burned by her boyfriend, who was involved in a drug cartel in Mexico, and burned her entire chest where her breasts were basically burned off. And we together were able to sort of tag team and do a breast reconstruction on her. So it's rewarding to do that, but I feel like it's my obligation to give back in that way.
And there was a particular patient named Andreas. Tell me about him.
Andreas is a very inspiring British gentleman who was burned in a case of domestic violence but a mistaken identity, where a jilted lover came to his house, knocked on the door, poured acid on his face, and his face was burned beyond recognition. I've done several procedures on him. He's just a really courageous person. He was in court with me the day I got sentenced. We've brought him back for more treatments and also more to come.
Mm-hmm.
They are such inspiring examples of what's really at the core of being human, because you lose your face, you lose a lot of your identity. And so we try to help them. It comes easily for me to do it technically. It definitely adds depth to the way I feel about my practice and my life.
If it wasn't for Face Forward, I'd be treading water. It's access to surgeries and procedures that I would not be getting elsewhere. You're not just helping me, you're helping my family.
And when you look at the Harvard beginning, the difficulties with your father, how you built this magnificent, world-renowned practice, went through some blips, are you pretty proud of what you've accomplished?
Yes, I am. I'm most proud of just sort of the state of spiritual awakening that it's led me to. I feel like it was meant to be. I'm proud of it. I think that there's still, as a person who's driven, There's still more on the horizon. I always want to do more, but with a better perspective, with the right motives, and with sort of my contribution at large in mind the whole way.
And Dr. Mani, to people listening who suffer their own bouts of shame or missteps, is there a life on the other side of it?
There's definitely a better life on the other side of it. I think that if my story can help anyone, no matter what happened to me, if it can be used to inspire other people, that there is hope no matter what you go through, no matter how fair or unfair it is. You have to focus not on negativity, not on bringing someone else down, but on bringing yourself up, and specifically bringing yourself up for the purpose of being of service, of being of help to other people.
Well, I have found you incredibly inspiring, both from a scientific and skill perspective, but also your openness and your willingness to share your redemption story. Dr. Mark Mani, thank you so much. I wish you continued success, and I thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Giselle.
Thank you. And thank you for watching another edition of LA Stories. I'm Giselle Fernandez. We'll see you next time. Wow, that's the perfect combination of science and soul. You can hear more of this conversation on my podcast, LA Stories Unfiltered. Listen now on the Spectrum News app or wherever you get your podcasts.